IVM.
Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Uncle Please Sit. I am Joel Pereira and with me as always is my co-host and buddy Tushar Abhichandani. What's up, Tushar?
It's good, Joel. How's it going with you?
COVID-19 in 2020.
I think if someone did an analysis of this podcast, they'd be like, क्या नया बोलेंगे ये लोग अभी introduction में?
Yeah. You know, the problem with lockdown, it is the destruction of banter. Because there's nothing, right? It could be raining. Like we are sitting in Bombay, it's rained like crazy for the past 2 days. It has made no difference to my life. Like last year at this time, I would be like, hey, I went to work and then I got stuck in the traffic for 2 hours and then I waded through neck deep water. And we had all these stories.
Even when when the monsoon started, like, oh, crazy rain. So now it's just like, we don't give a
Yeah, no difference to me.
do it.
The only way I can tell that it's raining now, especially when I'm sitting in the house, is suddenly my AC becomes cooler. I don't know if that happens with you, but I'll wake up suddenly and be like, hey, it's suddenly like noticeably cooler. I think it's raining.
Yeah. It's cooler though, but Bombay rains also sound good. They're loud as fuck.
Yeah, sometimes, no. Anyway, pleasantries aside.
Yes.
Pleasantries aside, we have with us, of course, as always, another special guest, our buddy Jason Lewis, who is a very senior. Wait, Jason, let me finish your intro.
Fine, do it.
Jason Lewis, who is a very senior tech journalist. He's a former science and tech editor at the Mumbai Mirror and is now the tech tech columnist at the Midday. Jason, what's up?
Hey, what's up, man?
How's it going?
Is this? Was that my cue? Did I miss it?
No, there's no such thing over
If
here.
you notice, there are no cues here.
Please don't mistake this show for hyper professionalism.
Yeah, please, buddy. What have you come for?
I think, but I think today we nailed the intro.
Yeah,
we
you
still
did,
fucked
you
it up
did,
a
you
little
did.
bit.
No,
Correct.
but that,
Little bit.
yeah, but that the listener didn't hear, no, because we did retakes.
No, I'm talking about Jason's intro went a little off. No?
That because Jason jumped the gun. It's not my fault over there.
Immature
You paused
guest.
too long, okay? You paused too long.
That is true. You did give him space to jump in.
Yeah, but primarily, this was better than other because Jason, we are on episode 26 right now, and we've a very intro so far
I've
in
heard
different,
a couple of them.
in different and varied ways.
Yeah.
But today, I think we've established a benchmark. But today was a good one. Today is what we can aspire to and hope to better in the future.
So, Jason, how's it going? Tell us what lockdown things you are doing that other people haven't done already.
Well, I'm cooking and selling food, which is different.
That's nice. That is an excellent thing to do. By the way, guys, Jason is also a crazy good cook and often sends food to people. Now he's selling food to people.
Yeah,
That's
the only different thing that I've done. Otherwise, it's life as usual.
home chefing.
Yeah.
Remember when we used to go out and people like you used to do things like quote unquote pop-ups where random strangers would meet and share them without masks and share a meal and sit at the same table. Remember when restaurants, what was that place, that restaurant, what is that? Le Pen Quotidien. Where their entire thing was, strangers must meet and break bread together. And,
Community table, right?
This was where the old Sundance was, right?
No, this was in BKC, I think.
Oh, BKC.
There's one in BKC and there's one also near Gateway.
It's a global chain, yeah. It's a global chain. And their entire thing is that they don't have tables and chairs and reservations, etc. They have these long benches and for communal meals,
basically.
Oh, wow.
Community tables. They do have tables and chairs, but most of them is community eating. And the idea is sit near a stranger and engage him with conversation and all. Dude, the only stranger I met in the last 5 months is these chaps who come to deliver food to my door, food and groceries. But even they're not total strangers because Swiggy tells me their names. So introductions become easier.
Yeah.
Man.
But since we are talking about online information, Joel, this is good segue.
Oh, smooth, Tushar. Super smooth.
Very smooth.
Very smooth.
So yes, guys, as you may have noticed, we're talking about apps and information and social media. So today's topic is actually inspired by the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. I'm sure most of you have seen it. Today, we're going to be talking about how social media is affecting our lives, where it's going. Is there a way out? Is there a way to even use it in a balanced manner? This and a lot of other things we will be discussing right after this break.
I want to thank Intel for supporting our show. Do you remember when last year we spoke about how the Intel vPro platform is built for business? Well, I'm glad to say we've kicked things up a notch. That's right, Intel is back with a new and improved version of the platform. Optimized with 10th generation Intel Core processors, the platform is just what IT and business users need, especially in times like now when most of us are working from home. The new Intel vPro platform lets you do more of what you want and less of what you don't. So it's better for you and for your IT teams, who really are the backbone of keeping your work from home experience easy and enjoyable. The platform is built to minimize your efforts and maximize your PC productivity, especially when working from home. I can safely say that the new vPro platform gives you more enterprise efficiency with less constraints. Visit intel.in/morewithvpro, that's VPRO, to discover how you can get more done with less waiting. If you're listening on the IVM Podcast Android app, take a look at the screen right now and you'll see a link which will take you directly there.
And we're back, Tushar and me, on this episode of Uncle Please Sit. We're talking to Jason Lewis, who's a senior tech writer and editor. And we're talking about this new show that dropped on Netflix last week, called The Social Documentary, called The Social Dilemma, and the buzz that it's created. And so here's the thing, right? If you had to paraphrase the topic this week, would be this: social media bad. That is basically it. But then at the same time,
or if you're being classy, it is social media ki wajah se lode lag gaye.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something like problematic or something.
But the funny part is that people are still using social media to convey this message, right?
Yes, Jason, we understand the irony.
Yeah,
and
us pointed out on Twitter by everyone.
I haven't seen that. Sorry.
And us on new media like podcasts talking shit about social media.
Hey, we're not building random algorithms to destroy people's lives, okay?
I wish we could, dude. I wish we could. I wish we had suddenly we had millions of listeners. That would be amazing. I'd do it. I'd sell my soul for it. Which brings us to part 2 of this episode. What will we do for more clicks? See, Tushar, this is we just paraphrase the entire tech story. Yeah, we began with we must do good and we must we should spread information, and the only way to defeat a bad idea is a good idea, etc., etc. And now I'm just like, F it, I want clicks.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is how symbolisms and metaphor work.
Yeah. We went from do no wrong to F it, I want clicks.
Yeah, paisa de paisa. But yeah, so basically today's topic is the social dilemma, which essentially talks about how social media, which sort of began as a force of good, a way to connect us, a way to sort of introduce us to a lot of interesting things, something that even led to democratic protests and all sorts of really positive things. At some point,
I think also we are in the ideal space because all three of us are in our mid to late 30s.
Yeah.
And we were adults. Yeah, we were sentient adults when social media hit us what? I think 2007, 2008. I'm not talking about proto social media blogging, I'm saying actual.
Facebook was 2006.
Facebook. I think I got onto Facebook 2007 or 2008 or something like that.
2008 was Twitter and Instagram was about 11 or 12.
So we were all in our mid-20s at that time, right? Yeah. When social media happened. So we were old enough to know.
I would just like to remind you that.
Huh?
Okay. Wow, Tushar is such a child.
It's because of the social media pressure.
So we've seen this, we've seen life without it, and initially it seemed amazing because I remember in 2007, I think it was, when I joined Facebook for the first time, and the first thing I did was be amazed at the ability to reconnect with school friends or with college buddies. Which you hadn't
Actually,
seen in
I'll just
years.
interrupt you there. In terms of reconnection, no, I made
Hmm.
so many reconnections on Orkut.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
so
Orkut.
Orkut had no concept of privacy.
Hmm.
You could not lock your profile like you can in Facebook. Like Facebook, you have to be a friend to see someone's profile, depending on the setting. It like depending on what your setting is. Orkut had no fucking concept of privacy. You had a profile, everyone could see it.
I don't think I got. No, I never got onto Orkut. Orkut
You
was
want
one
on
thing I
Orkut?
did.
Discovered a lot of my really and the thing is, I've moved around a lot. So I found a lot of my old school friends on Orkut, and then that
Huh.
moved on to Facebook.
Yeah, and
Of course, a lot of them are
and
Sanji
then
now, so I don't know. I was like, why did I find them? So, but moving on.
the story of all our lives. No, all our old friends have become like.
Deeply right.
And no, and then like I remember also that was in 2007, 2008, and then it got. I think the first big move where we saw social media really affecting lives was, I think, positively, right, with the Arab Spring. I think for me, at least, I remember that was in 2010 or 2011, and I used to follow these people on Twitter and these people on Facebook. And I was like, wow, this Twitter is doing such an amazing job. And they're like, this is how people, because back then there was still a lot of control, right? Especially over established mass media. Like if you were in a place where the government controlled all the media, then you were getting onto Twitter. And the Arab Spring, all through the Arab Spring, people were connecting on Twitter in Egypt. What was that place in Cairo? Tahrir Square. The Tahrir Square.
In context, it actually happened earlier with the 26/11 attacks.
Correct.
I remember people in Colaba putting up photos of those helicopters coming in. People
You're right.
Near Oberoi putting up photos of all the siege in Oberoi. And like just everyone was connected at that point in time. I remember. I was
Yeah.
what is going on? Obviously, back then we didn't have it on our phones. So the spread was a lot less. But it was a big deal, I remember, 2008, 26/11. And then, of course, subsequently we had the Arab Spring.
Yeah.
And,
then in India also we had that,
the
the
terrorist
Anna
attacks
movement.
also, remember?
sorry?
The terrorist attacks also that were happened, right?
No, that's what I'm saying, 26/11.
Yeah.
26/11, no, and then later we had the CA, the Citizens Against Corruption, CAC, sorry, Citizens Against Corruption, and the Anna movement.
Yeah.
Then the Nirbhaya protests that happened in Delhi.
Nirbhaya protests, yes.
And at that time, I remember Twitter was the one that was quite at the forefront of disseminating news, and that's how people used to communicate with each other.
Yeah, I remember everyone was like, this is amazing. Look at us all coming together, do all these great things. And forget that, not just events. There were also situations where, on a small scale, I remember there's our friend Dharmesh. I remember randomly in 2009, we made a random hashtag about old Indian ads trend globally. So random fun stuff used to happen on social media where you were connecting with all these people. And also as a lot of us were first movers, a lot of like-minded people sort of came together initially, met in real life and all that. This is before it sort of blew up.
There was also that anonymous thing that had gotten a lot of
your school ka anonymous things.
Yeah.
Yeah, where an anonymous page about your school or your college or even your housing society where people just put up stuff. So yeah, although that went into the more gossipy space, but but yeah, so
it was still fun and it was mostly harmless.
Yeah, it was mostly harmless.
Then IT Cell came.
IT Cell. No, and also subsequently, like even the Social Dilemma points out, right? How in 2011 suddenly, most of it started getting accessed from phones a lot more than from like a laptop or a PC.
Yeah.
And also algorithms started happening, right? Like, I mean, there were always algorithms, but like just the massive curation of your timeline, I think started happening post 2010, I think.
Also the algorithm basically would get smarter, right? I mean, they're using AI, right? So over time, these things get smarter. They understand people more and they start, curating things better.
Yeah. So, wait, Jason, when did you notice all of these changes?
I don't know, actually. I think fairly early. probably I think 2010, maybe 2011. Facebook especially.
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of things would like appear, and then you'd notice that things are getting
Something's
viral.
off
And
here.
yeah, something's off here, right? Exactly. That I mean, that sense of something getting off, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. So I think. All right, sorry. I lost my train of thought.
That's fine.
Just because social media has ruined your attention span. That is why
It has. I mean, it has. It just definitely has. Like I can't go a second without not looking at my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, that sound, ting, and then you're like, where is it?
And sometimes it's not even the notification. It's just like, acha, doing nothing. Okay, chal, let's pick up my phone.
Yeah. The thing is, these guys have built such databases about you right now. I mean, the Social Dilemma documentary had a lot of this, but they. I was telling you this earlier, right? There was this lady who basically got her Twitter data, not Twitter, sorry, Tinder data.
Okay.
Right, and it was 800 pages of data.
Damn.
Okay, and they had everything, like the times when she was feeling lonely. What time what is the probable time she's going to pick up and search for somebody. Everything, 800 pages of it.
That's crazy.
And it took her months to get that data.
This is particularly creepy because Tinder is again not one of those apps that you engage with very regularly.
Yes.
The way you engage with a Facebook or an Instagram.
Yes, exactly.
So this is scary. So can you imagine like the kind of
I remember.
Imagine all the data.
I remember reading. Yeah, I remember reading somewhere about how Facebook has apparently. Facebook knows you better than your closest than the person closest to you.
I'm pretty sure Facebook knows us better than we know ourselves.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure about that. And it makes itself, it makes itself apparent sometimes in ways that are very creepy, but also at the same time not correlated. Like people keep saying, "No, I was just talking about this," and then suddenly the ad popped up.
Yeah.
The simple solution will be like, okay, maybe Facebook is listening to me. But the fact is that it's far more insidious than that. That apparently Facebook knows what you want even before you want it. And, and it's using, and the other thing is that everyone you speak to, so there are two train of thought over here, right? And it goes, so the way I see it, okay, the way I see social media, I never got onto social media really because I just thought it was a little strange from the start. And I'm not going to be one of those guys who like, I told you so, but I genuinely, I mean, at that time, I was a journalist and I had a weekend show, and I had a national forum. So I was like, wow, isn't this, how much of me would people really want to listen to? That was my thought process at that time. And I remember thinking to myself that this, me sharing every bit of information, everything about myself seems a little weird, and the people who need to know will know, and those who don't know won't know. That was how naive I was, obviously, at that time. Because, and even though my engagement is so limited on Facebook or on Twitter or any of these apps, apparently even that itself is enough for them to build a fair profile.
The very fact that you're liking stuff or looking at stuff that is just data that they're collected about you.
Yeah. Coming back to what we were saying, there's that people have always been saying this, right? That if you're accessing the product for free, that means that you are the product. And it always sounded really pithy, it's like, oh, that sounds like a really smart thing to say or whatever. But that is literally how it works, right?
Yeah. So basically, right now, data is the currency, right? Nothing else matters. It is a commodity, and it's also the most expensive commodity. It is essentially selling you. Everything about you is public knowledge, and they know exactly how to target you, what to sell to you. Okay, so I mean, how can we escape this? We can't actually escape this, because escaping this means leaving social media. And that's not going to happen right now. Okay.
Yeah. So, no, what I was saying was that it's not as much. I think when we started realizing the problem it was not as much that people want to sell us sneakers or people want to sell us towel detergent or whatever. I think people are okay with that. I think the problem was when people started weaponizing, as in people started weaponizing social media for disinformation and for violence and things like that. I think that's when we started perking up. When was the Rohingya incident? Yeah, that was what, 2016?
I think around that, yeah.
2016, yeah, I remember that time. And then Facebook in India, remember Facebook, what, Basics?
Yeah,
Facebook Basics, yeah.
Facebook Basics, where they tried to create this, what they were calling the walled garden, where you would access data only from Facebook and so on and so forth. And
for free.
For free, yeah. And I think that's when we began to realize, hey man, these guys are not necessarily, I think because we had all drank that tech Kool-Aid, from the start, which was like Google being on do no harm, and Facebook was
which
connecting.
Incidentally, they've taken out of their charter. It's not part of their company mode. This
good. At least they're not lying. No, but seriously, right? I mean, I think that's when we started realizing, hey man, these tech guys are not necessarily doing right by us. When when they started weaponizing information, when people started weaponizing social media for political agendas and for violence, actually, I remember when the Rohingya thing was happening, those investigations are still ongoing. About how Facebook, because Facebook Basics basically it failed in India, but it worked in Burma, in Myanmar. Okay. And the story goes that because Facebook Basics worked in Myanmar and it was free, and Myanmar was just opening up at that time, the junta was, the elections were happening and so on and so forth. And you had the Rohingya, who were a minority community, and basically they used Facebook to unleash this populist violence against this community. And this was what, in 2016?
Yeah, this is actually being investigated by a bunch of agencies.
This is actually, being investigated. And then, of course, in 2016 was also when the election happened in America.
Where social media played an incredibly big role.
Incredibly big role. And also which was later found out with those, Cambridge...
Analytica.
Cambridge Analytica, yes. I mean, those leaks and all happened. I mean, but even then, they're still around, right? Nothing's happened to them.
Because they're too big now.
Yeah.
And then we started realizing the click farms and the way you can game the algorithms. And initially, I think social media also said, we are doing our best. We're doing our best efforts to combat violence and to do this. But the fact is that they are in the business of engagement, right? And Tushar, I think we were talking about this earlier on, Jason, and we were talking about this earlier, that the algorithm is designed to get elicit reactions, right?
Yeah.
That's what you were saying?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So
it's designed that way, right? It's designed to make you, or it's designed to sort of arouse the craving.
Yeah.
And sort of bring you there.
See, again, there's... Sorry, Jason, you were saying?
Yeah, so this addictive behavior is what we are craving, right? We just want to sit and click and look at things. So they're just playing with that. I mean, there is nothing we can do about it.
And I guess for those of us who engage, there's also the notifications and the likes and the so on and so forth. But you know what? I'll be very straight about this. I don't really care about the narcissism of social media, because two people do what they want to do. My problem, I think, is where it is with disinformation and hate speech.
Yeah.
I think that is my primary Because I think there's too much of hand wringing about the fact that we are addicted to our social media and it's making us narcissists and it's making us attention deficit and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, we live in a very engaging time. Like the internet is such and whatever, and they're learning to deal with it. I think my biggest
but wouldn't hate speech and all be part of this? This whole self-image of your the image of yourself. Right, it's being dictated by the social media.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's. See, obviously, I think on any information platform there will always be bad actors, right? But I also, at the same time, we also know for a fact that tech companies can, like for instance, what's happening now, right, where you have people like Donald Trump who are just saying completely nonsense things, right? Or even in our own government, or even in our in governments around the world right now, you have this, we are in this quote unquote post-truth reality or whatever shit, and you have people saying random things, and we know for a fact that social media platforms have the ability to check these statements, to fact check these statements, or to say that this statement is wrong or whatever, and they're doing it a little bit here and there in I know, for instance, Twitter.
No, Joel, that's the drop in the ocean, because the problem is not just fact checking. The problem is that, like, for example, I forgot the guy's name, the guy with the beard in the film, who basically said how fake news travels 6 times faster than real news. And also the fact that if you, like, for example, how the professor, I've forgotten all their names and whoever was
no, but I think if anyone, I know who you're talking about, the bearded chap, yeah.
No, and she mentioned, and the other lady who mentioned that the Pizzagate thing, right? For example, how if you followed this page and that page, then the algorithm
suddenly the Pizzagate thing would appear. Yeah.
So the problem is also the algorithm is designed in such a way that it seems to be moving towards certain kind of information / fake news more than actual news. Or the people putting out the fake news have figured out the algorithm.
Yeah, the thing is, fake news, by its design, is always supposed to be more engaging, right?
Yeah.
It'll always be something that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
Okay, that
you will be surprised to know.
Yeah, you'll be surprised to
know.
You
would not expect. My favorite is more affordable than you think.
Jason, go on.
At the end of the day, I feel that rather than blaming the users and users getting rather than having the users control control what content comes out, I think these guys need to have some sort of regulation on their algorithms also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, since they are a profit-making firm, they're not going to do it on their own.
Yeah.
Governments need to force them.
So, I don't know if you guys are keeping up with this, but for instance, in companies in Europe, countries in Europe, like for instance, Germany. Okay, Germany is a big market because Germany has the largest population in Europe. Okay, and Germany also has very strong hate speech regulations because of their rich and varied history. And
I wonder what you're talking about. I wonder what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's I think sometimes I feel they overreacted.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So apparently in Germany, if you are a platform, right, you could be either Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And if on that platform someone puts up hate speech or someone puts up disinformation, and it's flagged, okay, as hate speech. Like for instance, like what Wikipedia does. There's the Wikipedia model, right, where you have editors and so on and so forth. You have moderators and they are correcting and they are flagging things. And if the company does not remove it in 48 hours in Germany, they are paying a 10,000 euro fine per day. Okay, which means then that Facebook or Twitter or whoever has to start investing in people to basically stop this kind of nonsense.
Yeah, dude, they have the capability because, like, I'll give you a simple example. There is Facebook in Saudi Arabia.
Huh.
And do you think Saudi Arabia allows Facebook to be completely unfettered? Of course
Yeah,
not.
exactly, right?
I'm sure
Exactly.
they cut out a lot of stuff based on what the government asks them to. Of course, now the
Yeah.
problem is that you don't want it to be like a government thing where it's just like, okay,
Yeah.
but the
I
point
think
is they
something like
have
an
the
independent.
capability
Yeah.
to have independent boards, independent systems,
Hmm.
and even maybe figure out ways to change the algorithm, which can actually prevent a lot of this.
You know,
Which they
the
could
pushback
do,
to this now, which they could do, yeah, exactly, because they've done it in so many places.
Yeah.
You know, the pushback that I sometimes hear to these kind of statements, right, that Facebook should regulate and so on and so forth, especially from people who are, say, a little more like libertarian of a libertarian view, or people who are pro corporate are like, you know what, you should be controlling yourself, or you should be, we all agree, fine, we all agree social media is bad, and but then you should be, you should limit your time on it, you should limit your engagement on it.
Which is bullshit,
So I'll tell
right?
you, it's bullshit.
yeah,
Forget even
it's
the
complete
addiction
bullshit.
side of it.
Yeah.
Because it's not even an individual issue, right? In the sense, for example, I will control myself. I will not go on. I will not go on Instagram. I will not go on Twitter for hours or days or whatever. But the point is, the fake news that a lot of other people are consuming is going to affect my life, right? Of social media. So it's not just an issue of me going up. It's like, you know how we were talking about the pollution debate a couple of weeks ago when Sejal was here for the environment.
Yeah.
Like it's all good to tell people that tum kam plastic use karo. But until the corporations get involved, cleanup is not happening.
Definitely. I mean, again, the plastic, they are still using plastic bottles.
Yeah.
Why can't they just switch to glass? I mean, glass was working perfectly before this.
Yeah. So it's like individual action is great and all, but like until the corporations get involved, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
No, I see this from a slightly different perspective. Okay. So basically, let's say social media is a product that is fully legal, is highly addictive, okay, and is causing problems, public problems. I would liken it to something like, say, smoking.
Yeah.
Okay, hear me out. So for the longest time, right, everyone was like, smoking is bad and smoking is whatever, but you should quit. Okay, or you should not start, or you should, it's on you. People said the same thing about, say, in the West about obesity, basically bad habits, right? That are funded, that are corporate owned. And then I remember I was reading this. I saw this. What was that film? Yeah, the Russell Crowe film, The Insider. Did you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was about the tobacco industry, and then I went into one little rabbit hole of research about what was happening at that entire trial and so on and so forth. And you had all these companies. I mean, you had the prosecution basically establishing that these companies are, obviously, tobacco companies are so wealthy, right? And there was a time in the 90s where tobacco companies, or 90s, 80s, seemed to be everywhere. Okay, they were on advertising, they were in sports. Yeah, sport. And not just, I mean, the US Open was called the Virginia Slims US Open, right? Remember that?
1996 Cricket World Cup in India was the Wills.
Yes, Wills.
Benson and,
I remember Wills, yeah.
Benson and Hedges World Cup.
Yeah,
they were on they were everywhere, right? Cigarettes were everywhere. And then suddenly, the information came out that these guys, who are basically masters of the universe as far as money is concerned, were hiring these crazy smart people to basically mess your mind up, with advertising and so on and so forth, where you didn't know, where you had literally no control. Like, for instance, I remember the important one was the Camel brand of cigarettes. And they had that Joe Camel. I don't know if you remember Joe Camel. There was
a very children targeted.
Yeah, which was and basically from then, dude, I've been on flights where people have smoked, which is something that if you tell a 20-year-old now, that they think you're crazy, but cigarettes were ubiquitous. I remember my very first job when I was at the Indian Express, and people used to smoke at their desks in the office. Okay, and we've come from there to where we are now. I'm not saying people aren't smoking; they still are. But I think one of the ways that we could probably dissuade disinformation or nonsense on social media, I guess, is by just creating social taboo. What do you think?
No, so I'll tell you what the issue is with cigarettes. Like, for example, with the thing is, cigarette is not a medium, right? It's a product that you're using.
It's not. It could be a medium.
It could be.
Wink, wink.
But
we shouldn't be saying these things now. The NCB is listening. Hey, we just alluded to it.
National Council Tobacco Board. So the point is,
sorry, it's not a medium. It's not a medium. Correct.
The of trying to do this is like if in tobacco, you put like a bitter taste when you smoke, so that you are aware that okay, ye hai, but like how in LPG you put a smell so that you know that LPG is leaking.
It's bad,
Bad. So if the equivalent, because see, how will you dissuade people about social media? By putting it on social media. And then will they tailor the algorithm to even put this information out?
Yeah, which they want, obviously.
Because tobacco is easier. Tobacco is not a medium. Tobacco is a product that you can say things about, whatever. Like it has a thing. But then on TV and on social media, everything, you can put up stuff about how tobacco is bad for you and you shouldn't do this. And like also government did other things. They added taxation. They added apparently.
Yeah, there was a lot of regulation around this.
Amounts of dollars. So, and there were those photos and whatever. You can't, with social media, how do you do that? Because you'll have to put it on social media and then depend on the algorithm to then put it back in. Jason, you were saying?
Yeah, so which is why I'm saying like it's not possible to do that. You would probably have to regulate. You have to get the companies to do what you want them to do, like force them to do it. There is no way that this sort of social regulation will work in any scenario where social media is concerned.
It has to be functional regulation in the way, like for example, how in TV you're not allowed subliminal advertising, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or at least cinema. Somewhere it's banned, I remember. So
like,
where you could set up systems in a Facebook or a Twitter or whatever, that X, Y, Z type of things are not allowed. That you can't do it.
So here's the thing, right? Like for instance, we were talking about in Germany. So I'm reading this from the Spiegel English edition, and it says they're called the NetzDG laws. Netz is a Z because they're cool like that, which require social media sites like Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube to remove hate speech, threats, fake news, and other controversial content within 24 hours. Not 48. I said earlier 48. 24 hours. The consequence of failing to remove banned content, up to 50 million euros in fines. As a result, social media companies in Germany have found ways to comply to the new laws. For instance, Facebook has 2 deletion centers in Germany with 1,200 employees solely dedicated to monitoring content. While some applaud the law as being among the first of its kind to take precautionary steps against the spread of hate speech and fake news, NetzDG has come. Obviously, free speech advocates aren't really happy about this because it shouldn't be left in the hand of private companies. But the fact is that in Germany, 67% of Germans strongly approve of the policy and 20% somewhat approve. So that's 87% in total. Okay, 7% neither approve nor disapprove, and only 5% disapprove. So, and it's the same stats in France also, which has a similar law.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think should be global. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
This is something that needs to backfire in terms of the government thing, because if you have a crazy government, which
no, so it has to be an independent. It has to be an independent party that's looking at this. There has to be somebody from outside who's looking at this, but the government needs to say that this needs to be done.
Yeah. But no, my point is, how some countries have terrible governments that can cause certain problems.
Wink, wink. Nod.
Yeah, Pakistan's terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the thing is that
Saudi Arabia, friends, it's the worst.
It has to come from, I feel like government regulation is great and all, and this does seem like a solution, but the other one also, because also in all of this we're forgetting, social media is also very good. It's amazing in a lot of ways. It does do a lot of good. It does create a lot of access, and even positive movements happen there. So we also have to have that balance where we don't just completely stifle it.
Yeah, of course.
How will this stifle it? How will it stifle it if you're doing just hate speech?
I'm saying any sort of regulation that comes in should not be stifling.
Ah.
Because see, hate speech also is, you see it on Indian Twitter every day, no? Suddenly, like someone from various polarities will look at something and be like, "Oh, this is hate speech," when it's obviously not.
Not, yeah.
So that is also there. So you have to, like, it's like the reporting thing. Like, no, the problem is we're all like, "Oh, this person said something abusive, let's report him." But then on the other side is also like, "Fuck you, we'll also mass report because we have numbers."
But I mean, even if you look into that risk and say, okay, this might happen, I think the positives of regulating this is a lot more than, I mean, the
No,
negatives.
I'm not saying there shouldn't be regulation. I'm just saying it should be smart regulation. Regulation that does not stifle like crazy. Because we, in this lovely, beloved country of ours, so we have this great ability to put regulations that destroy media. Joel and I just did an episode on TV and how the TV regulations have f***ed up TV completely and cable.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, regulations have to be very carefully sort of. I think there is a very simple solution, but the fuck up is it will mean that the companies make no money.
What is the solution?
Chronological. Instead of having a curated timeline, you have a chronological timeline. So, for example,
which is what it was before, right?
Which it was at the start, but then they were not making money. Then, right, Facebook started making money later, much later, 2008, 9 types.
Yeah.
And they started curating. So, my suggestion would be to have a timeline that is not curated. To, like, I follow 50 people and I see whatever they're posting as they're posting it, as opposed to Facebook curating, like, okay, Jason is posted today and I see that post 2 days later, or I may not even see that post because my engagement levels with Jason have gone down.
Also, I think also the suggestions that Facebook and all these social medias make also need to be regulated as such. I mean, timeline wise, I'm saying these guys always.
That's the algo, no?
Yeah, the algo always keeps telling you, right? Look at this person. Look at this person. Look at this person. So
or
even
people
that, or people you may know, even the posts that come from there, if they would regulate it, I mean not regulate, sorry, put a timeline, I think that would also help.
But that's the thing, right? We're basically asking people to not make money. So that's the fucking conundrum. How do you figure out a way where people can also make money and also the universe doesn't get
Well, they made a lot of money till now, so.
Yeah, but you know how it is, no? It's not like you're suddenly going to be like, I'm 50 billion, but I'm okay with 20 billion now.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like I said earlier, I have no problem with Facebook wanting to know, Facebook or Twitter or whoever wanting to know what my taste in music is or what I want to buy from Amazon next. I think the bigger problem is the fact that I'm afraid that tomorrow, if I like 15 different people, someone will put me down as like an undesirable. That is my large fear about Facebook and Twitter and all that. Especially now after I see that. Sorry.
So I feel like all the other way is you just can deceive the algorithm. You just keep looking at content that you don't give a fuck about to just confuse the fuck out of the algorithm.
Well,
that happens sometimes.
As a journalist, you keep doing that.
Yeah, that happens a fair amount of time.
Yeah, so I get random pop-ups right now. Like what?
Same. I remember once, and this is the weirdest thing. We were. I used to be the showrunner for On Air with AIB, So we were sitting in a writer's room and we had a bunch of comics, okay? And I was reminded by randomly sometime later, I got a article about dog anuses, okay? And I'll tell you why. And then I realized, and I'm like, what the fuck is this telling me this? Why are they giving me these suggestions? And then I realized that we were once speculating on whether a Dalmatian's bum is black or white. Okay. And I actually Googled it. I searched for it. And Google is like, this man seems to have varied interest in dog bums. Yeah, they sent me one. No, but you know what? Sometimes when you're if you're watching YouTube on a Fire Stick or on your TV or on your laptop or something, and you're playing music or you're just watching random videos, and then you let it be, and then you walk away and you come back, and it's played like 5 different videos that you didn't click.
Yeah.
Even that sometimes, and I'm like wondering why is this why is YouTube playing this for me?
But the other scary thing with this whole social media situation is how it's affected media organizations. Because obviously a lot of people, because Facebook and Google are obviously cornering a lot of the digital advertising budget and the overall advertising pie. So so a lot of the media organizations now are dependent on Facebook for their views, for their general reach. And now the fuck up is every time the algorithm changes, media organizations get.
At the same time, they're not giving media organizations any part of the pie, right?
Yeah, which they should. So now apparently they've done this in Australia. Australia's passed a law that Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now Facebook is like, it. We will not put their articles up. So now it's become a different thing. So the thing is, it's so hard. That's the problem. Like even when you come up with these supposedly fair use laws or laws which want to do the right thing, it's just so hard. Or tomorrow Facebook can open its own newsroom. It has the money.
That's true. They
And
do have
newsrooms
the
are
money.
not very expensive for someone like a Facebook or a Twitter.
Yeah, or a Twitter. No.
Yeah, they can just throw some money, make one, and it's done. And now the fuck up is
that's why.
so there's this famous case of College Humor, right? So apparently, years ago, they moved a lot of their attention to Facebook promotions and stuff like that. Facebook videos, sorry. Later on, they realized that even though the numbers were there, it wasn't translating into sort of money or whatever. And later on, they found out that apparently a lot of the numbers were inflated, according to a Washington Post article. The numbers were somewhat inflated. So what they thought they were getting in terms of viewership is not what they were getting. And apparently even the revenue sharing wasn't up to the mark. So it eventually led to some of these websites essentially collapsing. Because they'd invested this and then projected a certain amount of revenue. But that never materialized.
They're just evil, dude.
So that's scary as fuck.
So, do you know that even YouTube, for example, in India, despite having the numbers, you will not make the same amount of money probably a US YouTube would.
Yeah, because they pay you in dollars there and rupees here.
Yeah, and the numbers mean nothing here. So if you have say 12 million views, you're not going to roam around in a Lambo the next day.
I don't think that happens in the US also.
I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, obviously, it doesn't happen in the US also.
Unless it's a third hand, really fucked up Lambo.
And we've come to
the amount of money that they give creators even here.
I think that's also a function of the revenue, right? The revenue in India is very different from the revenue you're getting in the US.
I guess so. But are you saying that they're
and
not
also our laws are a lot lax about compensation in general.
That's true. We have no laws.
We've come to the end of yet another podcast with this bleak outlook on life. Everyone's it sucks.
But I think I don't know what the solution is, but I think there has to be transparency of some sort.
Yeah, so I feel that there needs to be regulation and transparency at the same time. And I think people should be allowed to access their data. So if a company has your data, I should be able to look at it if I want it.
Or what about an option? What about a paid option where you tell me that we won't collect your data, but you have to give us as a subscription?
That's not going to work. These guys, even if they take money from you, are going to keep your data. It's not that they don't. It doesn't make sense. You won't be able to pay them enough money.
That is
the amount of money that they're making, you wouldn't be able to pay them.
That is true. Yeah, as an individual, my value as data is much higher than my subscription.
Exactly.
Yeah. They'll be like, how much will you give? How much?
Yeah. Your subscription fee, sir, would have to be $11,000 a month. I was like, okay, take my data. Take it.
No, I think that there needs to be this way you can ask for your data and look at it yourself. I mean, whatever vast amount of data that they have on you. The problem right now is we don't have access to our data, so we don't know what they're thinking about us or what our model is.
Yeah.
At the same time, there is no regulation. Okay, so that needs to be in place too. And I think these things need to, at least a directive needs to come from the government, but there needs to be an independent agency looking at these guys.
Yeah.
You can't just let them have a free run and expect things to get better. Because
I honestly
they're there to make profit.
I honestly believe that if the Democrats win the election in the America, they are going to go after social media companies because no one has been affected as badly.
I think they're going to go after tech companies in general.
No, I think it's also a case, like, for example, how like in the early 1900s, when like Theodore Roosevelt came to power, there was that whole America was essentially run by 5 business corporations.
The antitrust. No.
Trusts. Yeah, that's how antitrust.
Yeah.
So there was the banking trust, there was the railways trust, there was the oil trust.
Steel.
Yeah, steel. So these guys essentially control everything, and he literally broke them. So maybe the solution also is to break companies. But although I don't know how that works with tech. How do you break up a Google? How do you break up
the thing is, so they tried it with Microsoft.
It's been done before, with Microsoft.
But क्या फायदा हुआ उसका?
कुछ नहीं हुआ.
Why? Microsoft still rules the OS market.
Yes,
it still rules everything else.
No. 1 second. They didn't break Microsoft for the OS. They broke it for the browser.
Yes, for the browser being included in the OS also.
Correct. Yeah, okay. That's what they went after Microsoft.
I don't think that's why Internet Explorer failed. I think it failed because
Internet Explorer failed because it was shit.
If it had been a good product, they wouldn't have given up.
But the new Internet Explorer is good. I've shifted back to Internet
I think maybe
Edge.
Top publicity. What are you saying?
Yeah.
But my problem is, like, what do you do in this case? Like, for example, do you break up a Facebook into like separate Facebook companies, separate?
No, I don't think breaking up, as I said, I don't think breaking up is the solution. Even breaking how social media works is the solution. I think just regulation, regulation, independent body, and forcing these guys to do what you need them to do. There is no way these guys are going to do it independently. Or even if they're going to do it independently, it's going to be all veiled, and people need to know what they know about this.
That is also
okay. I think we've come to an end.
There is no silver lining, friends.
Uninstall the apps. Guys, uninstall the apps.
Burn your phone. Throw it away.
Instagram and Facebook. So I don't have either app on my phone. And I remember once, Ashish, we were working together on something. And I was looking up someone, and I was on Instagram on my browser on the laptop. And he was like, wow, Joel, you're such a Luddite. And I'm like, you know what? This is going to come to bite you in the ass one day. And as it turns out, just yesterday or day before yesterday, while I was researching for this podcast, apparently Facebook is being sued in America because Instagram has been turning on people's cameras and listening to them and watching them.
That I think, isn't that a Apple thing?
Apparently,
so on Apple,
others have done it apparently.
So on Apple, so here's the thing: on Apple informs you when your camera has been turned on, and that's apparently how they found out that their Instagram, even though I'm not on the app or the app is in the background or whatever, the camera is on and they're basically looking at you and listening to you.
Also, Apple is the good guy in this case for a change.
For a change,
seriously.
To everyone listening here, to all the tech companies, please don't sue us. We are poor people with a very limited viewership. So please don't do the Streisand effect on us.
Hey, that would be awesome. I'd sell my soul for clicks.
No clicks.
Facebook jail.
But, that brings us to the end of this enlightening episode and a very sad episode because there is immense sadness in what we've just spoken about. So thank you, Jason.
But Tushar, why don't you tell everyone what our Twitter and Instagram handles are?
And in what can only be described as hilarious irony. While I look for the message that I'm supposed to read out, Jason, tell us about your life.
What about my life?
Nobody asked it. What about? But yeah, Jason, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, man.
It means a lot.
Thanks for inviting me.
Once again, our contact book has helped us. So I'd just like to say, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out our other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. Jason, your handles are?
Jason Lewis. There's at Jason Lewis everywhere.
Jason Lewis on Facebook and Twitter.
Yep.
All right. And Instagram, sorry. And Instagram, you're also Jason Lewis.
Yes, everywhere.
Wow. You're part of the evil force that started all this, clearly.
Early adopter.
I am Pereira Joel on Twitter and joelpereira.esq on Instagram.
All right. And I'm Yono K3 on Twitter and Tushar_Abhi on Instagram. And that's it from us, everyone. Thank you so much. Goodbye. And stay safe.
And run away from the Rona.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel, for supporting us. First, right off the bat, want to congratulate Ashton Doctor on celebrating the 300th episode of The Habit Coach. It's a great show. If you haven't been listening to it, listen to it now. And if you listen to it, you can almost go for an entire year with an episode a day. It's really fun. Do definitely check that out. Arjun Koladi, the head of sales for Spotify in India, was on Advertising is Dead. Do check that out. Really fun show. On Cyrus Says, we had Sumit Basu, the author, fantasy author, one of my favorites. Definitely do check that out. It was Utsav Memorial Week this week on the IVM network. He was on Cyrus Says Cock and Bull on Thursday. He was on Litnama and, of course, his own podcast, Postcards from Nowhere. Do check that out. And one last note before we go. IVM Likes is back, and we've been doing a bunch of interesting conversations about different pop culture things that you might want to check out during the pandemic. Do give it a listen. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Filter coffee is a fascinating beverage. You need to pick the right beans, blend them in the right proportion, roast them to perfection, and slow brew at the right temperature to get the perfect cup. Which is exactly like great conversations as well. You need to track down the most interesting minds, get them into their zone, and settle down for an unhurried, unscripted chat. And coffee for me is always, always, always best enjoyed with friends. I'm Karthik Nagarajan, and do share my table as I meet some of the most interesting people I know and sit them down for a strong cup of coffee and an even stronger conversation. Join me every Wednesday for a freshly brewed episode. This is not Frappe. This is the Filter Coffee Podcast.